Okay, it is now 1:16, so we will start with the call of the roll. I hope everyone is here. Eminie? 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 Okay. Al Young? Al Young, can you say you're here verbally, please?
Here.
Perfect. Bagastos? Bagastos? Big?
Here.
Birch?
Here.
Chopra?
Here.
Chui?
Here.
Dehab?
Here.
De Silva?
Here.
Del Callisto?
Here.
Della Vedova? Della Vedova, can you please say that?
Here.
Please?
Sorry. Here.
Jacinda? Jacinda? Dixit?
Yeah.
Egbayemi? Egbayemi? Figueredo?
Here.
Gold Lesqui?
Here.
Hackett?
Hello. Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Jones? Kosak? Was that Jones or Kosak?
Jones, I'm here.
Okay. Kosak? Kosak? Mabetta Lavinda?
Present.
Mirando? Mirando?
Here.
Messick?
Here.
Nakua?
Here.
Patel? Patel? Sampson?
Here.
Sarilasini?
Here.
Seymour?
Here.
Singh?
Did you say sing?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Did? Could you possibly say that? Oh, yeah, no, teleconference. Never mind. Staphykonos?
Stethukos here.
Stakuthos. Okay, let me write that. Thind? Thind? Desai? Sai? Violin? Violin, would you be able to say that verbally, please?
Yes, I'm here.
And Wang?
Here.
Okay. We are now going to continue on with our elections. Woo! So, currently, we are now going to move on to our next election, which is going to be the Vice President administration. So so first, can I entertain a motion to close nominations for the Vice President administration? Sorry, give me a second. Figueredo? Figueredo, could you verbally say the motion you're trying to put on the table?
Oh yeah. I would like to move to close VP admin nominations.
Okay, and I can see that the seconder is Singh. Figueredo, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, let's close them. Also, Josh just put something in the chat about these motions already having movers and seconders.
Oh, perfect. You see, I didn't see it on my end.
No
Let me
worries.
pull that up. Thank you so much. Who's that? Who's the official seconder? Let me pull that up. I'm just there. I see it. Moved by Miranda, seconded by Hackett. The SRA members close nominations for the vice president. Moved by Miranda, seconded by Figueredo. So I will just use that instead of the new motion. Thank you for letting me know that, Miranda. So Miranda, would you like to speak to it?
Let's close on.
Okay. Figueredo, would you like to speak to it?
Let's get her done.
Okay. And currently, our nominations for VP Administration are Annika Spazov and Graham Noble. Do we have anyone else who would like to nominate themselves or be nominated? Okay. Do we have any further discussion? Okay. Then we're going to move to a vote. Moved by Miranda, seconded by Figueredo, that the SRA close nominations for the Vice President Administration of 2020 to 2021. Now would be the time to write your vote. I figured it out. I was muted myself. So the motion does pass. So currently we have our two nominees, Graham Noble and Annika Spasov. Graham and Annika, are you both here or?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm here. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so we're now going to start with our 15-minute introduction presentations. Graham, you are up first. If you'd like to share your screen, that is totally okay.
All right. Let me just take 1 second. And all right. Screen sharing. Are we all good?
Yes. Do you have any minutes? Which warnings do you want me to give you?
If you could give me a 3-minute, a 1-minute, and a 30-second, that would be wonderful.
Perfect. Whenever you're ready.
Sorry about that. Awesome. Hey friends, welcome to the VP admin portion of the election session. Before I get into the details of my ideas for the year, I'd like to take some time to go over what really fits within the scope of the VP admin role. Here, you can see a fairly surface level list of the responsibilities supervised by the board of directors. I've taken the liberty of breaking it down into 6 key elements of the student union: finances, marketing and comms, student life, HR, internal governance, and advocacy. Given the broad scope of the VP admin portfolio, I'd like to take this opportunity to shed away at all the other board responsibilities to give you an idea of what to expect from this position. To start, let's swipe away the VP finance position. Here, as you can see, it's starting to get more manageable. Now, if we do the same with the VP education, you can see that a large portion of the finances, communications, and advocacy sections have been offloaded to other positions. But we still have one position left, the president. Now, they sort of pursue whatever project they deem the most appropriate. They generally cover a lot of elements across various MSU departments. I hope I don't confuse you by removing the presidential responsibilities that are left, since they are only the ones still present on the screen. And here you have it, the VP admin portfolio, or at least what it's been for as long as people can remember. As you can see, this covers a lot of the MSU's operations. As you might expect of all board positions, this one takes the cake for quick and streamlined burnout. Past VP admins rarely ever get through to summer or September without experiencing at least some extent of occupational fatigue. It's not necessarily a matter of character, but of systematic issues that force this role to dedicate the majority of their time putting out fires rather than incorporating any permanent structural changes. While it could be handy to add another board member to the team or introduce a completely new set of administrative staff, those changes aren't always feasible, and we need to be careful of how we utilize the staff we currently employ. Of course, the employees we must direct the most scrutiny towards are the board members before you today. So let me tell you about myself. I've never really followed a conventional path to my own development. Coming into university, I toured alongside 149 other performers in the Drum and Bugle Corps, the Seattle Cascades, traveling across the USA for 3 months, rehearsing 10 to 12 hours a day in craterous fields or on steamy asphalt, and spending night after night, barring the discomfort of sleeping on a school gym floor or trying to catch some Z's on the tour bus, which taught me the tenacity to deal with rough situations with a long-term goal orientation. This meant that as I started first year, I jumped headfirst into as many extracurriculars as I could get my hands on. Naturally, I joined the marching band and within a month took on the position of conductor. Here, I led the band through rehearsals, parades, and offered educational lessons whenever possible. Well, clearly that wasn't enough band for me, so I joined the Mac Pops Orchestra, as well as the pit orchestra of the Maxi Musical as a trumpet player. As the story goes, I rose through the ranks with everything that I did, inspired by my predecessors and the opportunity for growth. I dove deeper into every passion that I explored. The next summer, I went back to drum corps, building my skills through yet another arduous journey full of hardship and reward. Returning to school, I took part of Welcome Week, this time as a science rep. Here, I provided support for students, finding myself a niche in personal outreach and long-term support. I kept at my work with the Maxi Musical, but with almost zero singing experience, wound up as the vocal instructor. Wanting to be the best instructor I could be, I joined a barbershop chorus, where I developed my love for singing harmonies with 80 jolly old dudes from all walks of life. And my second year was definitely crowned by my experience as the vice president of the marching band, where I orchestrated the band's performance in the Toronto Raptors Christmas halftime show. When students had all gone home, I knew we needed to take advantage of this opportunity. I reached out to all the musicians I knew from bands across campus and even some local cadet groups. In the end, I managed to convince 60 individuals to come perform with us, only 13 of which were current members of the band. As well, as the story goes, I became section leader of the 24 trumpet players during my last year with the Cascades. With the marching band, I led the group to perform in the movie It Chapter 2, the Buffalo St. Patrick's Day Parade, and a reimagined charity concert for music therapy, concluding with my own arrangement for vocalists, marching band, and orchestra with over 90 performers on the Eller Wilson stage. I continued to work with the Science Musical as a new and improved vocal director, barbershop chorus member, and returning Science Welcome Week rep. So, and now we're here. I've seen a lot through my experience at Mac and in the Hamilton community, but organizing a sport check photo shoot, Buddhist temple opening ceremony, and Raptors return don't come close to the value of my time as Associate Vice President, Internal Governance. I didn't mention my third year experience in the IG Standing Committee earlier because nothing really happened. When I took on the role, it really felt like starting from scratch. During my time, I created a policy review record, template, and schedule for vital transition development. With my committee, we conducted almost 40 policy reviews, 9 policy revisions, revitalized the club's department, and laid the groundwork for effective governmental reform. Through this position, I've developed a critical understanding of the board's functions and what the MSU needs to succeed, not just next year, but in the long term. Now that we're on the same page, let's connect the dots. All right, my platform centers around MSU-wide cohesion and flow. We have an opportunity here to provide a truly valuable service to all students, whether through personal development, support, or education. I've focused the last portion of my presentation to explaining what these terms mean to my platform and a key point from each. Sorry, there's a technical difficulty. No? Awesome. My platform centers, what's happening? Okay. We need to find new ways to connect the MSU. Often organizations under the union's umbrella don't interact in a coordinated way, or at least one that's written in any sort of accessible or tangible schedule. One solution has to do with how we survey. So I've developed a concrete plan for survey enhancement and standardization across the MSU. By installing surveys effectively within the new website and mandating user-friendly creation tools, we can identify key discrepancies that facilitate survey engagement and effective construction. As well, we can work to create recyclable question formats to increase the efficiency of survey creation while reducing the burden we place on respondents. My knowledge of education cognition and psychometrics put me in a unique position to promote effective statistical analysis tools for the development of survey questions and appropriate response interpretations. As well, I want to incorporate a steady stream of micro compensation for survey responses to encourage students who might feel defeated by the highly competitive prizes currently offered. This compensation could be provided in the form of promotional codes for MSU events or business units to simultaneously increase financial engagement, though further consultation is still in the works. We need to work together to transform the structure of the MSU. One-year projects have had their time, and we need to develop a line of long-term goals to empower and support students more effectively. One such transformation comes from the clubs department. While I had a heavy role in implementing changes to the clubs department already, the planning and policy writing stage is only the beginning. I plan to support the new clubs admin through my extensive clubs experience and provide guidance on the vision of our 4 new operating policies, as well as the pitfalls of the previous system. This comes in the form of club performance and activity reviews, club guidebook creation, and financial stability procedures, which all require plenty of oversight if this restructure is to fulfill its purpose. Next, we need to work to harmonize the MSU through internal and external bonds. While the MSU has established many relationships thus far, there is much to be done to strengthen them going forward. One key asset that often goes underutilized is our relationship with the McPherson Institute. I'll touch on most of the educational aspects of this plan in a moment, but McPherson serves as an avenue to crucial development for student and faculty outreach that could benefit students in a number of unique ways, whether as learners or as educators. My goals to integrate an ongoing communication channel with McPherson could provide the MSU with higher level student engagement, training initiatives, survey construction, and transition supplies to upgrade many of our weaker infrastructural systems. As well, we need to inform the MSU through effective education. Many positions within the organization have little to no knowledge of where their positional puzzle piece fits within the MSU jigsaw puzzle, and this can create all sorts of problems. My most exciting and, I must admit, my most challenging platform point, I have devised a comprehensive plan to bridge this informational gap. Learning management systems like Brightspace, the platform that currently fuels the Avenue to Learn platform, can serve just this purpose. There are limitless possibilities to incorporating online educational strategies and tools into the MSU's HR department to bolster employees and volunteers' understanding of how the MSU works and where they fit within it. In my conversations with Avenue, they've already expressed an interest in integrating. It's just a matter of execution. I know that the development and administration of this learning system will strengthen job alignment personal development, and the potential for all individuals within the organization to pursue their goals free from the expectational uncertainty hidden away in the MSU's structural black box. Once we've given each other clear expectations, we must work together to achieve accountability within the MSU. And while that sounds like more work, it's really just a matter of support and appropriate supervisory structures. So, for one, the SRA caucus leader position needs to be reassessed. It's a broken position in need of additional positional clarity, support, and perhaps even a small monetary reward. I see the caucus leaders as an opportunity for informational hierarchy to the executive board and their faculties, as a support role for their caucus and a point of communication within the SRA. Whether through monthly meetings or troubleshooting check-in sessions, I know this position has the potential for greatness. It's just a matter of making it happen. We need to guide the MSU through project continuity. Part of long-term goals isn't just proposing ideas, but following through on the ideas of others and adapting to the situations at hand with a methodical lens. One such project is the creation of an online platform protocol. I know that my fluency in both technology and policy will lead to a clearer and safer procedure for meetings, live streams, and chat rooms held by the MSU in the coming year, and in our age of technical expansion, establish a foundation for years to come. We also need to focus on transitioning the MSU through its extreme annual turnover. I have a lot of plans to address this, but one simple plan involves the reevaluation of transition document designs. By incorporating user-friendly and position-adaptable templates, we can increase the resourcefulness of our written transition packages and increase continuity from year to year through basic procedural changes. Finally, we need to engage and stimulate students within the MSU. Students aren't engaging with us, and we need to do something about it. As a final point, I plan to employ a service spotlight schedule, repurposing the ideally situated and underutilized campus front of shop as a tool for outreach, in combination with opportunities for one-time club booking to bolster club promotions. I hope to investigate this point further as campus operations undergo further reviews, aside from the KPMG internal audit. To conclude, I would like to thank you all for your time and look forward to working with you to unite the MSU in connecting the dots.
Okay. Thank you, Graham, for your presentation. I would like, Annika, the floor is now yours for setup. And if you have a presentation or so that you'd like to share with the assembly.
All right, I'll just get my screen sharing up.
Perfect. What warnings would you like from me?
1 minute would just be great.
Okay, perfect.
I may have to, sorry. I need to give permission. I got a new laptop and I'm still setting up the stuff on it, and I need to give permission to Microsoft Teams to access my screen, so I may have to leave the call quickly and then just restart it. Just the Teams part, that's all.
Oh, of course, that's
Yeah,
fine.
it's more about the technical difficulties.
This is a whole new thing for us, don't worry. While we wait for Annika, I feel as if now would be a good time to explain ahead of time how pooled questioning will work for the candidates. So what will happen is that we'll have 15 minutes of pooled questioning. We'll also have a time where we have a motion set for parameters to solidify that. And then what else am I trying to say? And for these pooled questions, what will happen is that it usually needs to be submitted to the speaker in writing. So if you have a question, you will not be adding yourself to the speakers list. You'll be emailing, give me a second. I set my email in the chat. You will email your questions to me in the chat, and I will amalgamate them, and I will be asking the questions both in what am I trying to say? Both in the time that they came in and also the order that it comes in. Oh, Annika's back.
Is it working right now, the screen sharing?
Yes.
Yay, okay. And you can see all the slides right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. All right, am I good to go? Or I wasn't sure if I interrupted any other points of information.
No. You were good to go. You came at a perfect time.
Wonderful. All right. Well, hello everyone and good afternoon. Hope you're all doing well and your families are all safe. My name is Annika Spazoff and I'm running for the position of MSU Vice President Administration for the 2020-2021 school year. I wanted to begin by telling you all a little about myself. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm graduating from the Bachelor's of Health Sciences program with a concurrent certificate in immunology, virology, and microbiology. I'm also a bit of a green thumb and have lots of plants since moving back home after the school closure. My dad and I have actually started another vegetable garden. My love of plants stems into other aspects of my life. During the first 2 summers of my undergrad, I worked in Northern Ontario as a tree planter and absolutely loved it. I'm also originally from another small town of Millbrook, Ontario, where we have a zucchini festival every September, and I'm actually the 2-time zucchini slingshot champion, which I guess is just a little fun fact about myself. Besides that, I've also been heavily involved in the arts and theater my entire life. I attended an arts high school, worked as an assistant stage manager at an equity theater, and also worked as an administrator at a performing arts center. So I started at MAC back in 2016, and I honestly have changed and grown and gained so much self-confidence over the past 4 years, and I want to share some of my experiences with you today. In first year, I was in Edwards Hall and absolutely loved it. I was actually really thankful to be in such a small residence, and transitioning from a village of about 1,000 people to a school of over 30,000 was pretty intimidating. In high school, I was heavily involved in my community. I was on the rowing team, on student council, volunteered on our local trail system. So when it came to MAC, I actually felt uprooted in many ways. I was craving some sort of new community, and I think it took some time before I found my niche on campus. And it wasn't until second semester where I joined Spark as a student and started attending more university events, and I joined the Club Frontier College that I started to feel more at home. Moving to second year, I repped for the very first time on the MSU Maroons, and during training, I was heavily introduced to anti-oppressive practices for the first time, which has since really become something I've dedicated to my lifelong learning. I also became a Spark team leader, which really helped establish confidence in myself and the importance of mentorship and building supportive communities on campus. I also began exploring Hamilton more as I moved off campus and continued volunteering with the Club Frontier College. It was in second year as well where I joined my faculty academic committee and began having more critical conversations surrounding how we were supporting our students. In my third year, I was the Spark Sessions Coordinator, which was such a highlight of my undergraduate experience. I gained a lot of knowledge surrounding training techniques, creative ways to engage students, conflict resolution, and also was first introduced to how the MSU functions behind the scenes from a logistical standpoint. Later in the year, I was hired as the incoming part-time manager for Spark and started having conversations surrounding MSU budgeting, hiring processes, and how to construct a year plan. Around the same time in December, I was hired as the transition and orientation programmer at the Student Success Center and worked there full-time in the summer and just finished my contract this past December. In this role, I was heavily involved in the planning of Welcome Week, both the training and events, including the Breakfast Club, and helping plan the speaker event, FarCon, alongside the Vice President Admin. It was actually in this role that I got greater insight into the role of the Vice President Admin. Before joining the Student Success Center, I was unaware of how involved the Vice President Admin was in the planning of Welcome Week. And when I began sitting on committees such as the Welcome Week Planning Implementation Committee and the Welcome Week Strategic Themes Advisory and Planning Committee, which the Vice President Admin actually co-chairs, I got to firsthand see how what the work Sarah was doing, and I became interested in the role. I think my experience in the Student Success Center would also be incredibly valuable in the role of VP Admin, as I already have an in-depth understanding as to what the role in Welcome Week is and have positive working relationships with much of the other university officials involved. The job was also a great opportunity for me to work with other departments on campus, including University Affairs, International Student Services, Residence Life, and the Athletic and Recreation Department. Uh-oh, I think I might have just lost my... There we go. Now I'm just wrapping up my fourth and final year, which is still weird to say. The summer leading up to my fourth year, I remained in Hamilton and continued planning Welcome Week, working at the Student Success Center, and planning the upcoming year for Spark. At the end of the summer, it was really bittersweet to have my last Welcome Week of undergrad, but it was really cool to be so heavily involved in the planning and see how my voice as a student was able to make positive changes. And the role of Vice President Admin, I hope, sorry, something just keeps happening with that. In the role of Vice President Admin, I hope to use the platform and position of the role to continue to create positive change on campus. It's not always the most glamorous job, but I'm really passionate about the work the position fulfills. Throughout fourth year, I continued to connect with my faculty through things like intramurals and volunteering at fall preview days. I also was a part of MSU SHEC for the first time as a peer support volunteer and was also on the research and advocacy committee. But a huge part of this past year has been my work as the part-time manager for Spark. Through this job, I got to work with the Vice President admin directly, and it was incredibly valuable to feel that support and guidance from Sarah. I think this experience also translates well into the role of Vice President admin in supporting part-time managers and managing their services, budgets, and conflict resolution. With the help of my incredible team this year, I made a lot of huge changes to Spark, including summer live streams, daytime sessions, targeted first-generation student support, sponsorships, and more. And in March, I was awarded the Part-Time Manager of the Year award. With this award, I want to acknowledge it would not have been possible without the support I received from the Vice President admin and the executive team, along with other part-time managers and stakeholders on campus. As Vice President admin, I really want to empower our part-time managers, SRA members, associate vice presidents, service volunteers, and students to pursue positive changes and take on leadership roles across the university. With that being said, I want to transition into what my vision for the MSU as a whole is. I'll go over some overarching themes and some of my key platform points. First, as VP Admin, I hope to better support MSU staff and volunteers, SRA members, and clubs so they feel more empowered in their roles and can better serve the entire McMaster community. To do this, I plan to redesign training, put an emphasis on structured transitions, and pull from my past experience attending, designing, and running training across the MSU and university. Another point of improvement is the overall perception students have of the MSU. Currently, I think many of our students are unaware of the resources we have or feel uncomfortable accessing them. I want the MSU to further engage with the McMaster community, including forging new partnerships across faculties and within the university, strengthening previous connections, and working towards better meeting the needs of our students. Currently, I also believe the MSU can improve its transparency and inclusiveness. If granted this opportunity, I hope to foster a positive environment for all students and staff through a lens of social accountability and equity. This would include creating multi-year strategic plans and creating new hiring policies. Finally, I am greatly invested in Welcome Week planning and have been dedicated to supporting first-year student transition throughout my entire undergrad. This year, we have unique challenges surrounding COVID-19, and I'm hopeful to forge creative solutions to help support our students. Also looking at support transition and training. To better support part-time managers, I want to utilize Microsoft Teams in light of COVID-19. It's a more secure space which can accomplish many things all in one place, including document sharing and hosting meetings. I also want to begin the part-time manager hiring cycle earlier in the year, beginning in late fall, and ask our services to have volunteers hired in the summer. Given physical distancing, many services are having to turn to online hiring, including online group interviews. This past summer for Spark, we were the first ever service to implement online group interviews, and I hope to build from that experience to help support our services this summer in their hiring. To help smooth out the transition period, I want to host a transition meet and greet touring the MSU office and introducing part-time managers to full-time staff, although for the current incoming part-time managers, this may need to be adjusted to an online format. I also want to create a sponsorship policy and training to help services expand their budgets and mitigate the potential outcomes of the SCI appeal. I also want to use my past part-time manager experience to improve our part-time manager training, including moving the hiring training, which Sarah implemented this year, to occur early in the summer, and to build on executive board report training and emphasize the executive board as a supervisory position. Further, I want to offer more comprehensive disclosure training for part-time managers to help them feel more comfortable and have more transparent workplace policies. I also want to improve service collaborations, including suggesting service collaborate together and also work with faculties directly, which will have the added benefit of also improving our outreach to underrepresented faculties. For service volunteers, I plan to implement standardized MSU-wide training for all services on anti-oppressive practices, sexual violence, and bystander training. This would be offered in September on 2 different weekends and allow services to further contextualize the material to their needs during their service-specific training. I also want to work with Khadijah Reiki, who is absolutely wonderful, to update some of the training slides we have and steer towards more case-based scenarios to promote active engagement with the material and allow individuals with varying levels of experience to feel engaged with the training. In my consultations with the outgoing Associate Vice President Services, I also discuss executive team training and presenting their role as an opportunity for part-time managers to utilize in their executive team training to support these volunteers in their unique responsibilities. For Associate Vice Presidents, I plan to have monthly meetings with the board and AVPs to check in and promote community building, but also to build skills such as managing committees and reporting. For the SRA, I want to strengthen the working relationship between the SRA speaker, Vice President admin, and MSU President so we can work together and ensure that our SRA members are adequately supported and feel comfortable in their roles. I also want to expand SRA member training we have, including guidebooks and videos on Robert's rules, bylaws, and funding, and utilize Microsoft Teams so we can meet and easily share documents. For caucus leaders, I want to implement further training which mimics aspects of part-time manager training, including event planning, accessibility, and writing reports. Overall, I hope to improve the support we provide the SRA so you all feel empowered to pursue your platforms and voice your concerns. To do this, I'd like to work with the Vice President Education to provide advocacy training and identify and provide contact information for various stakeholders on campus for SRA members to reach out to for consultations on their year plan. Next, looking at how we can better engage with the McMaster community. With the shift to online platforms, I think it can provide a bit of a silver lining for our online supports. Services such as Maxis have begun running peer support groups online, and I'd love to explore how we can further add online resources to our services. Many of our students go on global exchanges, have internships, co-op, or placements. It's important we can still support them even if they physically are not on campus. I also want to highlight our peer support services by utilizing a new videographer position and create a video campaign and continue working with the communications team to update our social media marketing strategies. For service reviews, I want to pilot focus groups. This year at the Student Success Center, I was trained on how to develop and run a focus group, including maintaining confidentiality and having guided discussions. I think this approach would be helpful to provide more holistic service reviews and would love to transfer it over to the MSU. I also want to rotate the responsibility of taking SRA meeting minutes across our caucus leaders, just like little highlights of the meetings. Some caucuses in the past have done this, so I'd love to see this occurring across the board for students to have to more easily access. Further, some of our students, including SWAT, Horizons, and Spark, have unique space needs and relationships with MUSC. I want to begin conversations surrounding expectations of both sides in the summer to mitigate potential challenges in the future. Around consultation, another unique challenge this year will be supporting EFERT. Currently, we have an EFERT advisory board, which includes folks like the Vice President of Admin, Security Services, and the Medical Director at Sunnybrook. I want to establish regularly scheduled meetings for the board rather than meeting as needed to help support EFERT's training in the future. Next, looking at some of my points on social accountability and equity. This year, I really want to focus on creating inclusive spaces for all our students and removing barriers. To do this, I plan to run a community needs assessment to identify gaps in our supports. With the new launch of the MSU website, I also want to create screen reader-friendly documents, including all our policies and service materials. This may seem ambitious, but it actually is a very quick process, which Spark began with our documents this year. I'm also aware when looking at social accountability, a lot of the work that needs to be done cannot happen realistically in 1 year. I want to write a 5-year strategic plan for equity and accountability in collaboration with the board to help our potential successors continue our work and actually create meaningful change. This year, as part of that strategic plan, I will focus on equitable hiring. Specifically, I want to write a policy and executive team hiring, which reflects what we currently have in place for part-time managers. And this policy would outline the hiring boards for executive teams, which would consist of the outgoing and incoming part-time managers, along with an associate vice president who is external to the service. During part-time manager hiring training, I also want to introduce standardized marking and mock marking practices to help remove bias from our volunteer application marketing. Finally, I'll talk briefly on Welcome Week. For Welcome Week, the main focus of this year will be creating contingency plans depending on the different outcomes of the current pandemic. This year, we have already had key transition events such as May at Mac canceled, and I want to ensure our students feel prepared for the upcoming school year, regardless of where we are at in the fall. I also want to shift rep training to be more case-based and utilize small group situational discussions. Further, I plan to continue the work I began in advocating for free parking passes and open parking lots during Welcome Week. Additionally, through my roles on the Welcome Week Advisory Committee, Welcome Week Strategic Things Advisory and Planning Committee, and the Welcome Week Planning and Implementation Committee, I will continue advocating advocacy efforts for planner equity, the inclusion of diversity service on the Strategic Themes Advisory Planning Committee, and transparency in Welcome Week spending. I also just want to take a moment to thank you all for listening. I know these are challenging and uncertain times, and it's also the middle of exam season. Thank you also to all of those I met to discuss my platform with and those who consulted on my ideas. I hope you've seen that I not only feel prepared for the role of Vice President then, but also have the passion and drive for it in supporting student life. I hope everyone is staying safe, but remaining connected. Thank you.
Thank you, Annika. Okay, and so when I was being in discussion and I realized that I personally made a mistake in the elections process, which I'd like to apologize. So one thing that needs to be done before closing is that we do need to, what am I trying to say? Motion for parameters for the elections. So what happens usually, let me explain, is that we have a procedure which is outlined by the operating policy, but what is not included with this is that if the candidates want to add a rebuttal, we need to motion to add that. So I wanted to, so what I'm saying is that like in the policy, we do have a procedure, but we do still need to ratify said motions. So am I making sense? Or no?
I
Okay.
believe it makes sense.
Okay, cool. So I apologize that I didn't do this before for the speaker, because this was also something that was raised for the speaker election, since sometimes people wanted to have restrictions for amount of speaking. So as of now, I would like to re-motion again for parameters for the procedures for VP administration, starting from 3.1.2, so the pooled questioning, if anyone would like to raise motions. And I apologize again for this massive oversight.
Can I raise a motion? Or
Yes, you can.
can I motion that it's a 1.5 minute speaking time for each question and no rebuttals?
Okay, may I please have a seconder? Seconded by Figueredo. Hackett, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, I think we usually do a minute for response times, but just to give people a little bit more buffer room, especially since we are online, I think a 1.5 minutes would be better.
Okay, and Figueredo, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, I agree with Shamar. I think it'd be good to give folks a bit more time to answer questions.
Okay. Hackett, just letting you know, I changed your motion a little bit just to make it only response time, because rebuttals are typically not typical of elections. So that's just what I did. Do we have any further discussion? Okay. And this is, to clarify, this is 1.5 minutes of response time for every single for both the pooled questions and the individualized questions, correct?
Wait, say that again?
Is this just for pooled questions or for pooled and individualized?
Pool and individual.
Okay. Perfect. And so moved by Hackett, seconded by Figueredo, that the candidates have a 1.5 minute response time for both pooled and individualized questions, and now would be the time to write your vote.
Sorry, can I just clarify? Is there still going to be the 30-second rebuttal, or is it just
No rebuttal?
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Last time to some. Oh, we got some more votes coming in. Okay, I'll give you about 10 more seconds to submit in your votes. Okay, and the motion passes. And I'd also like to apologize both to you, Annika and Graham, for that pause about the procedurals. So now we're going to be moving to our second section, which is going to be 15 minutes of questioning per candidate pooled. I'll explain this. Currently, people have been emailing me questions that they'd like to ask you. I've also now been going and compiling the questions, and I'll be asking you both the same question. You'll each take turns to answer the question, and then after we'll alternate who goes first in this time. And so we are now going to go with, and so this will be 30 minutes pooled. You're able to send me questions for until the 30 minutes end. Once the 30 minutes end, I'll let you know when I'm not going to be accepting any more questions. And I'm just going to set the timer on my end. So we're now going to start with our first question. And our first question is, what experiences and or qualities do you have that set you apart from the other candidates? So Graham, you'll be going first in this question.
For sure. I think that I definitely have a unique experience with the marching band, definitely in handling full-time staff in a support role rather than as a supervisory function. I think that having that dynamic worked out from the get-go will definitely help with delegation and job alignment in terms of, okay, this is the position in which the organization is structured for. So we can work together to make sure that that's incorporated well. I think also I have a very unique understanding of policy within the organization that originates from my experience with AVP internal governments. I know that going into policy for even 1 year is not long enough to really understand all the nuances. So there's definitely an opportunity to really expand the accessibility and transparency of our policy creation and review procedures so that one, the SRA can get a better understanding of what's going on when they're making decisions on stuff, and as well that students who are interested still have that opportunity to get involved and engaged if they want to see some systematic changes in the organization. So I would say that those two characteristics make me very unique in that sense.
Oh, sorry, I think you're muted, Marianne, but I can get started.
Annika, yep.
Yes. So I think some of the unique experiences that I have is, first of all, pointing out my experience as a part-time manager and also volunteering with like various services across the MSU. I think that having that firsthand insight will help me be able to actually support PTMs because I have that firsthand experience as to what they need and when they need it. And that hopefully it will also make me an approachable face that if part-time managers are struggling with something or they're having questions about budgets or how to market things, they can feel like they can go and reach out and ask those questions to me. I think as well, my experience at the Student Success Center has been like incredibly valuable for me in more aspects than just one. First of all, obviously, is that I got to work with Sarah, the outgoing VP admin, and a lot of her work surrounding Welcome Week, and I'm very comfortable in those responsibilities. And to have a lot of those positive working relationships with the folks that the VP admin would be working with potentially starting in May. I think also it just gave me a really good outside view as to how the university functions separate from the MSU. I think prior to that, a lot of my experience was centralized to the MSU, and I think it is beneficial to kind of see how the two pieces connect together to go and support our students. I think also like looking more back in my experience as a stage manager and assistant stage manager has also helped me look at perspectives from this like more macroscopic view and seeing how all these different cogs and gears come together to help support students and create outcomes.
Okay. Oh my goodness, my timer's not ending. Perfect. Okay, thank you. We're now going to be moving into our next question. In this role, it is impossible to please everyone. Can you speak of a time where you made a decision that people weren't happy with, and how did you deal with that? So Annika, you're up first.
Yeah, so I think first, one of the difficult decisions that I've had to make in the past was this past year when we were having year-long training for our volunteers on Spark. We had a situation where during the training, we had some heated discussions that came up, and while people were like very well intentioned in it, I think we ended up needing to have a bit of a space to go and cool down. And as the part-time manager in that case, I had to go and actually end those conversations and ask us all to just kind of take a step back, take a breather, go and have a break, and just be conscientious that there were folks in the room that had different lived experiences, and just like be mindful of how we were phrasing things. I think in doing that too, there's still folks who definitely wanted to talk and like voice their concerns. So I went and spoke to them individually afterwards, like during that break, and also reaching out and just chatting with the different folks who I felt needed some extra support in that moment. Afterwards, I also followed up with folks just to make sure that everyone was like comfortable with continuing the training, and that I think in the VP admin role, you might run into a lot of scenarios that are like that, or situations where you do have to make tough decisions, and that you do need to feel comfortable to go and step up and voice yourself when you need to.
Okay. And Graham?
I would say that an experience that really highlights this is changes to the clubs department of the last year. So not everyone's going to be happy with the changes that are coming into play. And that's just the reality of the situation. When you change anything in the organization, there's going to be some support and then there's going to be some pushback. So for example, when SRA members were very disappointed with some of the procedures that we had in place in relation to the CSSA, as well as the Dominion Society, it was sort of inadvertently tackled onto my role, where my responsibility was now to manage the production of 3 of the 4 new incoming clubs policies, as well as dealing with some of the debacle that has to play along with some of those results. So whether it was the introduction of Silhouette staff into some of my meetings that they had weekly, or some disappointed people who were perhaps very critical of bylaw 5 and how it needs to be changed because of the OPERG situation. I think that there's always room for people to criticize the way that policies are changed, especially when it impacts them directly. So how you handle situations like that is you offer as much educational support as you can for those individuals who are curious and engaged, so that they have a more informed perspective of what's going on. And then you discuss where are the discrepancies between your ideas and my own.
Okay. Just to ensure, is the 10-second timer working for both of you? Is 10 seconds fine, or would you like more time letting you know too?
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm okay
Okay.
with the 10 seconds. Thank you.
That's fine.
Perfect. So your next question is going to be, what is one critique you have of your predecessor, so the Vice President administration, and what do you do to plan on address this current gap or critique? Graham, you're up first.
So I thought a lot about this. I think that one of the biggest problems with the VP admin position is that there's really just too much piled onto this role. And it's not to say that, oh, I don't want to do as much work, but I realize that there are opportunities for organizational shifts to make sure that people's job descriptions really line up with what sorts of things we expect them to do. So I think that in Sarah's role, as well as in Christina's when I had previous consultations with her, the VP admin before Sarah, it seems like the biggest shock is dealing with management of full-time staff and making sure that everyone's on the same page with management and what sort of projects fall under which portfolio and how much approval is necessary to get things done. So whether it's my previous experience with full-time employees who operate sort of at that different stage within the structural cycle, I think that I could really instate or offer a more comprehensive support structure to ensure that people know where their role fits within the organization, and that we ensure that everyone's doing the best that they can from the get-go in regards to their own portfolios. So whether it's offering support and transitioning some positions within people's current job descriptions, or just making sure that everyone is clear on what are the expectations that we have set out for each role. Just making sure that the VP admin isn't swamped with some of the other tasks that aren't necessarily in their portfolio, and that everyone's doing their part.
Okay. And Annika?
Hi. Yeah. So first of all, I want to start by saying that I think a lot of the work that Sarah has done in her past role, and also Christina before her, did create a lot of positive changes, and I just want to thank them for that. I also want to say that I agree with a lot of the points that Graham said, and that kind of building off of that at first, we can look at tax shifting some of the responsibilities of VP admin to other counterparts. So I've had conversations in my consultations about, for example, in the role of supporting SRA members, we can look at working more with the MSU president and with the now incoming SRA speaker to kind of outline what that support's going to look like in advance, and who SRA members can go to about specific questions. I think also looking at another point that I think the outgoing VP admin could have maybe addressed more is part-time manager accountability. I think when we look at the executive board meetings and reports, there have been a pretty consistent pattern in not submitting reports on time or not doing so adequately. And I think to address that, I think that in that sort of situation, it is appropriate to go and actually introduce something like a written warning. I think in a lot of other scenarios that it's more appropriate to go and pull part-time managers into a conversation rather than going to a disciplinary action. But I think if we're looking at actions such as that, where it's not going to a supervisor, that we can look at being more firm on our stance.
Okay. Perfect. So the next question is, a part-time manager wants to release a political statement. You ask them to work with the VP Education as they oversee the MSU's advocacy. The part-time manager says that by doing this, you are censoring them and the community that they speak for. How do you proceed? Annika, you're up first.
Yes. So I think, first of all, I'd like to point out that there has been a new policy that's been written, I believe, just this past April, that is actually guidelines surrounding statements from the MSU, and that I would point towards that policy once it's been released as a guideline for what we're going to set as expectations for our policies. I think also when going and conversing with the part-time manager, not just like in this situation, but in a lot of situations where you might disagree with the part-time manager, is approaching the conversation with compassion, but also with an open mind. I think going in and like clearly communicating what my concerns are and explaining that, but also giving them the space to go and share their thoughts on things as well. I think also that it's important when you're having conversations like that is we can reflect on it and say that we are here ultimately, part-time managers, VP admin, the board as a whole, are all trying to go and aim towards the same goal, and that's ultimately supporting our students. And I think it is important that we go and have our checks and balances in place, and that sometimes there have been statements made in the past by the MSU, and if we do feel like it's an appropriate scenario, we can definitely look towards doing that. But I think having those conversations beforehand, just so that we're making a nuanced and compassionate response and making sure we're approaching it so appropriately, rather than rushing into a response.
Okay. Graham?
Oh, I think Annika was exactly right. So just to give a little bit of a history on sort of some of the things that she mentioned. Sarah and I have been working on developing some changes to the communication strategy policy to offer some more refined perspectives on, okay, what units within the organization are deemed MSU organizations rather than just people. So obviously when you have promotional material distributed by any sort of organization at any level, you need to make sure that there are guidelines that make sure that it's done appropriately. So some of the conversations that we've been having in consultations have been focused around, okay, PTMs definitely have their own right to have their own perspective and making sure that they can communicate that effectively. It's just about managing, okay, is this going to represent conflict within the MSU, which makes it unwelcoming to students, even those who they may be representing within the community? Or is this just going to be an individual who is speaking on behalf of something that they support? So I think one of the primary things to change in that aspect is just when someone comes to you with an idea for creating a statement, voice the differences between doing it formally through the MSU, because there will be an advisory committee established for reviewing that, including the VP Ed, as well as members of the Marketing Communications Department, or if they want to release the statement on their own terms within their own personal profiles, where they don't necessarily represent the organization. So just giving that education and that background before any statements are released and ensuring that there's constant communication on that front.
Oh,
Marianne, you're muted.
yeah.
I'll stop. The next question is, how does a successful term look for you as the VP admin? Graham, you're up first.
I think a lot of my platform points focus around developing a transition. So it's a little difficult to say what a successful term will look like for me until maybe a few years down the line. I don't necessarily have a lot of plans for developing instantaneous changes. And to me, success in that sense isn't necessarily a complete perspective. My goal for a successful term would be for me to ask the VP admin in 3 years or 5 years, what sorts of things are happening and what positions are still in existence. In my discussions with Christina, one primary thing she wanted to see more of is one thing that would put a smile on her face hearing from some future VP admin is that we had an HR department. And we can already see that in the works. So I think my goal for a successful year would not necessarily be complete every single thing on my platform. definitely going to be at least getting the ball rolling on the majority of them. But if there needs to be transition, focusing on those transition elements and not necessarily completing in the last stages of my VP admin portfolio and my term, all of those points, and rather focusing on, okay, how are we going to ensure that projects are continuing from year to year? And if I can hand off everything successfully and in a comprehensive sense to the next SRA, to the next VP admin and board, then I would deem that a successful year.
Yes. No worries. So for me, I think that it's a really hard thing to define. Like, as Graham said, I think success can look like a lot of things to a lot of different people. And that's what that looks like can change over time as well. I think one of the things that seems like success for me in the role is creating a positive environment where SRA members and part-time managers and associate vice presidents can feel comfortable coming to me for questions and also to voice their concern, and that we can go and create an environment where we feel comfortable having those productive conversations. I think another thing that would look like success for me is looking at more of the long-term changes that we have and that we need to make within the MSU. I think with when we look at the role of VP admin and a lot of the changes that really should be made in terms of like hiring and also equity, it can't just be done in 1 year. And realistically, we need to look past the scope of a 1-year position and look at making long-term strategic plans that potential successors could then go on and continue with. So I think success for me would then also be having creating a plan and having it clearly outlined and already have had the ball rolling on like targets that we can meet that any potential person afterwards in this role could go and walk into and feel comfortable taking on and feel prepared doing that. And I think that also goes into also a lot of transition in general, that I think when we do have all these positions coming and changing from year to year, I want to make sure that in the transition, folks feel comfortable and supported and prepared to start their terms potentially.
Okay. So the next question is, Executive Board oversees the day-to-day operations of services and PTM report to them, part-time managers report to them through yourself. Executive Board has indicated that they want to give a PTM a warning as they believe they aren't fulfilling the role. You do not agree. How would you proceed? Annika, you're up first.
Could you read that out again, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Executive Board oversees the day-to-day operation of services, and a part-time manager, PTM, and part-time managers report to them through yourself. Executive Board has indicated that they want to give a PTM a warning as they believe they are not fulfilling their requirements for the role. You do not agree. So how would you proceed?
Yes. So I think in this scenario, first, I would want to make sure that I'm hearing everyone out. I think first I would want to start by voicing my concerns and my reasoning and explaining why I think that way. I think in the role of VP admin is that you do have a really unique relationship with the part-time managers, and in that role, you just may have a better perspective as to what that part-time manager is going through, or potentially what that part-time manager, the work that they're doing, and that in that role, I would explain how I just might have more insight on that than what might be appearing across on the executive board. I think at the same time, though, it is important to go and hear out other folks as well, and making sure that I am actively listening in that conversation and participating and appreciating what the concerns of the executive board are, and seeing if that sways anything in any way. I think also that if we feel like we can reach a potential compromise, and that being pulling in the part-time manager into a conversation first and addressing our concerns and making deliverable action plans as to how we can make changes in the future to help them fulfill their role more and fulfill their role fully, rather than perhaps going straight away to a disciplinary action, and seeing if the executive board would be comfortable having a conversation like that first before taking those necessary steps. Obviously, though, I think there are scenarios where disciplinary action may be needed, and in that case, I would be definitely open to it.
Okay, Graham?
I think there are lots of things to consider in those scenarios, primarily that the executive board might not have the knowledge that you do, but also that they might have a more representative perspective of what's happening in the university. in terms of what critiques might be cropping up here and there. As well, when it comes to job descriptions and job execution, I think there's tons of room, especially given the current state of job description alignment, for miscommunication. So I think bringing the PTM further into the conversation to have those discussions openly within the executive board, as well as operating as a source of communication and a line of communication in situations where they're not feeling comfortable, so that we can establish that bridge where there seems to be some sort of disagreement. So obviously I would advocate on behalf of everyone having only educated perspectives on, especially if it's a serious matter like disciplinary action, to make sure that we're making the right calls for the safety of students and also for providing services to students. So I think that there's definitely room to open additional conversations, to introduce additional consultations, and make sure that everyone's on the same page before we go about any sort of changes or warnings. I think there's definitely room for establishing better job descriptions, and if we need to go over those as a group, I think that's definitely a resource that we could value more.
Okay. So the next question is, a huge part of the VP admin role is working on Welcome Week. What experience do you have that you can leverage in light of possible changes to Welcome Week due to COVID-19? So Graham, you're up first.
For sure. For one, I think that there's definitely room for changing the way that Welcome Week responsibilities are delegated. Currently, there's a bit of a mismatch in terms of when the faculty coordinator is hired. But while I do have experience as a rep for 2 years, I think that there's opportunity for me to engage, not necessarily as the only person in the board of directors, especially with the help of the vice president, finance, and the president, to ensure that every action is taken appropriately. I know that in the past year, Sarah got help from Alex and Josh to ensure that everything was going according to plan, whether it was reps route ordering or any other sort of logistical things. But I think just making sure that the Welcome Week faculty coordinator is supported in an adequate way to make sure that things are going as smoothly as possible. I don't necessarily see Welcome Week as the largest focus of the VP admin role, nor should it be. I think there are definitely tons of other projects that need to happen during the summer to make sure that when September hits, it's not just a matter of, oh, we've planned for Welcome Week and now there's the rest of the term, and also every other year to come, where Welcome Week will change indefinitely pretty much every year. There's definitely opportunities for me to leverage some of my knowledge of technology. I've been pretty proficient in programming and other sorts of technological facets for at least some of the recent years of my life. So I think just leveraging that and developing appropriate procedures and policies for online operations and making sure that everything runs smoothly.
Awesome. Annika?
Yeah, so first I want to say thank you for whomever posed this question, because I think Welcome Week is part of the role of Vice President Admin that isn't always the most obvious, and I don't think it's most advertised. And that from my experience, both in the Student Success Center and through working with Sarah in my role this year, I saw a lot of the time that Welcome Week actually takes out of the summer from the responsibilities of VP Admin. And I do agree that we can look at exploring some task shifting for that. But in terms of that, what I can do in Welcome Week planning, I think I have a vast level of experience and knowledge around Welcome Week planning, going back to repping every single year of my undergrad, but also most recently working at the Student Success Center for a full year in their transition and orientation department. I have very positive working relationships with folks from the heads of Residence Life, the Off-Campus Resource Center, Michelle Corbet from the Student Success Center, and different folks that are heavily involved in Welcome Week planning. And I think I do plan on leveraging those positive relationships in order to go and make positive change. I think when you step into the role on May 1st as VP Admin and you're suddenly co-chairing 2 Welcome Week committees and then also standing on another one, it's a little bit intimidating to walk into the space and be having all these discussions where planning's already began back in November of the previous year, and then all of a sudden you're expected to be a major leader in these conversations. And then I think me having that previous experience and that transition will then be like very minimal for me, that I can go in and build off of making changes surrounding like parking on campus, making case-based scenarios for training and more.
Thank you, Annika. Okay. And now our next question is, give me a second. Who did you consult with regarding the feasibility of implemented expanded training for the SRA? So Annika, you're up first.
So I had very heavy consultation for my entire platform. So that involved consulting with the outgoing SRA speaker, along with various outgoing SRA members, both who were on executive board and stood on various committees. I also made sure to ask SRA caucus leaders from different caucuses and from different faculties to make sure that I was actually getting a representative perspective and not just like looking at the needs of one faculty over the other. And so in terms of like some of the changes that I want to make to SRA training, like based off of that feedback, is that I think training for SRA has been rocky historically, especially when we're looking in light of this year for COVID-19, and that looking at making sure that we have plans in place beforehand that would look at going over Robert's rules, like potentially having a guidebook and a video on that, and explicitly going over different bylaws and who SRA members can consult on their year plans. So I think a big question that SRA members had walking in into these conversations was they want to have, everyone has these like really great and fantastic ideas, but didn't know how to implement them or who to ask that about. So in the training, being able to identify and provide contact information for different folks on campus and stakeholders and campus partners that SRA members could go and consult and ask questions about in pursuing their year plans.
Okay, Grant?
Awesome. So I'm going to have to group this into two different facets. So from an internal perspective, I've spoken to about half of the outgoing SRA to make sure that we're really addressing the key issues within the SRA's transitional review, whether that has to do with understanding the MSU governmental structure, supervisory roles, resources, project management, sexual violence and response protocols, which especially since we have a new one coming in, making sure that people at least have a better understanding of that, and just making sure that the SRA members are involved in that new introductory process. I've also spoken to the Administrative Services Coordinator, Victoria, to ensure that we're really building off of the current training, as well as my discussions with Madison, the Human Resources Generalist, to make sure that we have an effective training mechanism and some of the goals that they've already been working on. I know that in the internal audit conducted by KPMG, they spoke directly to the incorporation of LinkedIn Learning, which, while is a good idea from like a peripheral lens, considering the resources that we currently have at our disposal, I think there's definitely opportunity for external engagement. So I've currently been in discussions with the McPherson Institute, and as I mentioned during my presentation, they're already open to some integration, but just in case they aren't, I've spoken to representatives from Bridge, Absorb, Biz Library, and multiple other organizations who are willing to offer their support.
Okay. And now on to our next question. Under what circumstances would you fire a PTM? Graham, you're up first.
I think there definitely a lot goes into firing any employee within this organization for obvious reasons, whether it's suing or just making sure that we're compassionate and decent human beings. So I think PTMs, given that they report directly to the executive board, making sure that there's open and honest communication within members of the board, as well as incorporating that PTM in conversations to ensure that there's constant communication on, okay, what sorts of violations are there, whether they're many repeated infractions at a minor level or some major violations that warrant that high degree of disciplinary action. I think it's definitely got to be done on a case-by-case basis. You can't necessarily say that one action is deserving of firing someone when it could be representative of much larger issues or causes than what meets the eye when you initially investigate it. So I think just ensuring that everyone's on the same page about what's happening and what the recap of the situation might be, from as many angles as possible, and then taking the best step forward to ensure that, all right, is this a serious enough offense to warrant firing someone for? And then making sure that we're taking the appropriate procedures from a confidentiality perspective to ensure that they're respected and if they have to be relieved of their position, and then making sure that there's an appropriate transition in cases where they need to be removed.
Okay, Annika?
Yes, I think that there is no clear answer for this because I think there's so much context that goes into the potential removal of someone from their position, and you can't just boggle it down to just theoretical situations. I think that also before going to the level of firing or removing someone from the position is that there's so many other disciplinary steps that can be taken beforehand that involve just bringing them into a conversation and checking in with them and addressing some concerns that you have. It involves you can have a written warning, you can escalate it up to a verbal warning and different protocols that we have in place. I think also that before making a decision such as this is making sure that all parties are involved. So having discussions with whoever the potential part-time manager would be, and also having consultations with human resources, with the executive board to make sure that we are handling it appropriately and that that is the appropriate action to be had. I think also there are steps that we can take in place to be proactive about this and prevent part-time managers or from the different roles from getting to a place where we feel like they're no longer fulfilling them for whatever reason. I think that has to do with setting expectation with folks from the very get-go and outlining what we expect for people in their role, what that communication looks like, what the roles and responsibilities are to them, and that by taking that approach, we can also ensure that we're preventing a situation from occurring in the first place.
Okay. I'd like to thank you two for just now completing the pooled question period of elections. Woo! Give me a moment. So I guess this is now the part of the speaker's point to entertain the motion. Usually what would happen is if, so we have a point of information now, Young.
Yes, hi. How many remaining questions are there?
Give me a second. 1, 2. We have 7, but I'm still working on amalgamating some.
Okay. So I think this is related to what you were about to say. So you can talk first.
I was actually just talking about the next section of the elections process, not one that had to do with the pooled question period. So if you did have a motion, now would be the time to raise it.
Okay. Can I motion to exhaust the speakers list or just complete all the questions?
Okay. Do I have a second? Okay, perfect. Aoyang, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, I think that people did post, people have been thoughtfully writing these questions. And I think it's only fair to be able to complete going through the question period. And I think that it'll help us make a more informed decision.
Dixit?
No comment.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion?
Yes. Can I speak, Miriam?
Yes, you can.
Sorry, I should have put my name on the list, but yes, I'm going to, I guess, speak against this motion. I think for consistency across all positions, we should do it based on time. So if we want it to be 20 minutes for the question period, maybe extend it by 5 minutes, I don't think we should be exhausting the speakers list overall, because 7 questions, a minute and a half per, that's going to extend it for so long. And to be fair to these candidates as well as the one for the other position, it should be all based on time so that it is consistent. So I don't believe we should extend it. And if we are extending it, it should be based on a certain time limit rather than exhausting the speakers list.
Okay. Any further discussion? Figueredo?
Yeah, I just would agree with Shamar that if we're going to extend it for a certain amount, or if we're going to extend it to pick a certain amount of time, just because these folks also have lots of different things going on with their life, such as exams. So just giving them a time limit, and then also to Shamar's point about keeping it consistent.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah. Is it possible? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Is it possible to amend the motion, or would this motion have to be voted down and then?
What is your amendment?
Could I amend it to just, instead of exhausting the speakers list, adding 10 minutes?
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Oh wait, first we have a point of information, Della Vedova.
I was just curious if we could make an amendment to this that would be possible, that we will go to the end of the time limit and then possibly exhaust the question list on every election.
So
So
amendments.
it's consistent.
Okay, so amendments are typically only for that particular motion at hand. If you did want to change something, then you would do it at a motion for parameters.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so do we, do we have a seconder for Al Young's motion for extending it by, what'd you say, 10 minutes?
10, yeah.
Okay, so moved. Do we have a seconder? A seconder? Okay, the amendment fails by default for no seconder.
Oh,
So
I think, sorry, there's a
wait,
second.
we just do have a seconder.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can I
cool.
speak
So
to
Al
it?
Young, would you speak to it?
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah, so I was gonna say, like, I agree with what Shamar and Sarah are saying, that, like, yeah, we should keep it consistent. And I would also speak against maybe, like, exhausting speakers list for every single candidate, like Denver had suggested, because that would just make our question period, like, super, super long, and some questions may become redundant. So I think that extending it by 10 minutes will allow for a few more questions that people have asked to, like, be answered, while not really, like, causing too many delays in this election process.
Okay, Chewy, would you like to speak to it?
I agree with what she said. I think, especially for this section, for VP and mean, at least for myself, I would like to have more information to make a more informed decision.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion? All right, here's the amendment. Then we're going to move to vote. Moved by Young, seconded by Chewy, that the question period, that the motion is amended so that the question period is extended by 10 minutes. Please write in your votes now.
Sorry, point of information. This is just voting for the amendment, not the original motion, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So the amendment passes. We are now going to be talking about the motion. So moved by Young. Moved by Young, seconded by Dixit, that we extend the question period by 10 minutes. Do we have any okay, we have a point of order. So the point of order is, aren't votes only done after all the votes in favor had been counted? At Bayemi, yes, this is usually what occurs, but because we are now on an online platform, we changed the way that it's working. So what happens is that we now all vote all at once. But yes, typically you are correct that opposed only are done after favors have been counted. So that is correct. But currently the way that it's being done is currently as per what we're doing. So now we're going to be continuing the motion, moved by Al Young, seconded by Dixit, that we extend the voting period, the question period, by 10 minutes. Do we have any further discussion? Okay. Then we are going to move to a vote. So I've placed the motion, moved by Al Young, seconded by Dixit, that we extend the the question period time by 10 minutes. I apologize for my word spelling. So now would be the time to vote. Okay. And the motion fails. So now, if we have no more motions, we'd now be going to the individualized question period of the VP admin election. Okay, Figueredo, go ahead to speak.
Can I put forward a motion to table the individualized question period for the VP admin until tomorrow, like the end of the meeting?
Okay, do I have a seconder? Seconded by Johnson. Would you like to speak to it, Figueredo?
Yeah, this where we chat about putting all the voting tomorrow, just because we have some folks who have to leave this evening for some exams. So just to make sure everybody gets the opportunity to vote and it's consistent across all candidates, I'm asking that we move all of the voting until tomorrow.
Okay, Johnson.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Sarah just said. I think it's best to keep it consistent and keep in mind that there are folks who have exams later on tonight. So if we can get through presentations and pooled question period today, then we can move on to individualized questions tomorrow for everyone.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, then we'll move to a vote. So moved by Figueredo, seconded by Johnson, that we table the rest of the VP admin election until later in the meeting. All 4 packets of pie. Oh, no. Just please write your vote in. What's that? Whoops. And the motion passes. So the rest of the VP administration elections will be later in the meeting, and we'll get to that also later. So we are now going to be moving on to the next part of the election section, and that is for the vice president administration. So we have a motion with people. So it is moved by Mirando, seconded by Hackett, that we close nominations for the Vice President Education of 2020 to 2021. Miranda, would you like to speak to it?
Let's close them.
Hackett, would you like to speak to it?
It is time. Let's close it.
Okay. Do we have any further nominations? Anyone who would like to nominate themselves for VP Education? Currently, our nominees include. Oh wait, sorry. This is old me speaking, because we changed. Ignore what I said. Any further discussion? I apologize. My brain's all mixed up. Okay. Then.
Sorry, Marianne. There's a
Yes.
point of information about the agenda because. Oh, I lied. Never mind.
The point of information.
Just had a point of information saying that the schedule says finance is next. But
did I read that wrong?
No, the agenda has education next.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was just different in the email that was sent to them, but the agenda has education.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I'll be going as per the agenda. So currently it is education next. And so I apologize, Jess Anderson, for the confusion on your part. And okay, so now we're going to have, if there's any further discussion. Oh, yep, we have a point of information by Fazia. Fazia, go ahead.
Hi. So ready to go, but also, yeah, the agenda that was circulated to us had VP Education as third. I just wanted to double check which one had VP Education as second. I think I might have missed it.
So right now, the one that we're using is the agenda, which is on the SRA documents pages. So it's Administration, Education, Finance.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I apologize again for the confusion that was brought to the nominees. Okay, do we have any further discussion? All right, we'll move to a vote. Moved by Miranda, seconded by Hackett. The SRA closed nominations for Vice President Education for 2020 to 2021. Now would be the time to write your vote in. All right. And the motion passes. So we have two nominees for this position, and the nominees are the Fazia Iza and Ahmed Farzam Karimi. Are both of you on the line currently? I see Fazia's here. I can see that. Ahmed, are you here? Ahmed? Okay. Well, Ahmed does not seem to be here, but currently because we go in alphabetical order, Fazia, you would be up first regardless for this section for the presentations. Wait, before we start that, can I entertain a motion for parameters for the VP Education election? Yes, Hackett.
And is this for the question or the presentation?
This is for the whole election.
Oh, okay. So can I have 15-minute per candidate presentation period, 1.5 per candidate question, a response to the question, and then 15 minutes overall for the question period, or 30 minutes overall. Oh God, that
Okay,
was...
so you want 15 minutes 15 minutes per candidate pooled. Okay.
Oh, 15 minutes per candidate pooled.
Okay, and you said you wanted 1.5 for every question, including pooled questions and individualized questions?
Yes, similar to what we did before.
Perfect. Just wanted to double check. Do we have a seconder for this motion? Okay. Hackett, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, for consistency, it's nice to keep it the same across all VPE positions.
Aminia, would you like to speak to it?
Aminai. No, all good.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, just writing it down. Okay, so moved by Hackett, seconded by Aminai. That I spelt it wrong. I apologize. That we go by the operating policy for VP elections, excluding the 1.5 minutes for answering answering the questions which are given to the candidates. So all four packets of now is the time for you to vote. And the motion passes. So Fazia, if you'd like to get set up for your presentation, now would be the time to do so. Fazia, hello? Oh, yes, we have 2 points of information. Sorry. Hackett first, yes?
So what should I do? Let's do point of parliamentary inquiry.
Okay.
Is it possible for us maybe to take a short minute break to see where the other candidate is? Because if there is no other candidate, then we don't need a general question and an individual question. We could all just do it once. So do we need 5 minutes or?
You see, the issue is, since the parameters have already been set,
right,
and he is still currently a nominee, we still need to go and do it'll still be 30 minutes question period. So what can happen? The options are we can either just reduce the amount of questions which are asked to make it so it's 15 minutes, or another thing which can be done too is that, and which I'm planning on doing, is reaching out to the candidates to see where they are, because maybe they've caught up on something, they were in the meeting and they left. So just because they do have a little bit of time. So, but if you would like to motion for a recess, that is certainly fine. Okay. Fazia, you have a point of information? Fazia, hello?
Ooh, sorry, my mic was muted. No, it was technology related. I figured it out. Thank you.
Okay, not a problem. So we will now then continue with your presentation. Oh, Singh, yes, point of information.
Is there a way that we could amend the motion along the lines of what Shamar was saying?
The only way to amend the motion is to make a motion to reconsider, but I don't think we can add. But the thing is, we can't, because to motion to reconsider the parameters, you'd have to wait until new business. But at new business, the election would already be done. So okay. In a convoluted way, the answer is no. I apologize for the convolution.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Fazia, would you like to present whenever?
Yes.
And also, what type of timing would you like from me?
So could I get an update at 5 minutes as well as a minute?
Okay, perfect.
Alrighty.
And also for people on the chat, if you want to start sending me VP Education questions, feel free to do so, and I'll start compiling them.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. So hello, everyone. Big congratulations to getting elected to the SRA. My name is Fazia, and I am running for VP Education. Oh, sorry, I had a bit of a technological issue. Okay. Okay. So my name is Fazia Isa, and I'm running to be VP Education for the 2021 year. So I wanted to begin by discussing the experiences and the interests that make me a good fit for the role. I'll begin with my academic experience. So I am a political science and sociology major. I've been able to study international relations. So the study of international relations, I've been able to study analyzing political organizations and the history and structures of how nations interact with each other. Through political theory, I've been able to understand theorizing political life and the construction of states, as well as theorizing decolonization and colonialism. And through my sociology degree, I've also been able to study social inequality and really in-depthly study social inequality theories and the varying theories as well. So my academic experience has actually heavily impacted my extracurricular experience as well. I have a lot of interest in politics, and that shows in my extracurricular experience. So through my extracurricular experience, I kind of began my journey at McMaster as a first-year student, confused about what was going on at this university. I think I took the first year to really dive into my degree, really dive into political science and sociology, really understand what was happening there. And then in my second year, I decided to embark on the student life experience. So in my second year, I began it by repping for the McMaster Social Sciences Society on Blue Crew. It was a really, really great experience. I love Welcome Week. It's a wonderful time to interact with first years, feel young again, and not be so tired in second year. Additionally, I was able to volunteer on the University Affairs Committee. That year, I was able to become a policy author on the MSU Sexual Violence Response Policy. As well as in my third year, I was able to sit as the SRA Social Sciences Caucus Leader. That year, we were able to increase our outreach to social sciences students, as well as conduct a social sciences mentorship group with our faculty society. I was also able to work on the student engagement and retention MSU policy. That year, I was also able to participate in the McMaster Model United Nations Conference as a chair for the Social, Cultural, and Humanitarian Committee, where I co-chaired it and oversaw a super cool committee of 60 plus individuals. That summer, I was able to intern as a summer student at Metrolinx headquarters in downtown Toronto. This gave me a lot of insight into transit logistics, as well as the discussions that transit stakeholders have. So transit stakeholders such as Metrolinx, as well as the Toronto Transit Commission, were consistent stakeholders that we were interacting with over that summer. In my fourth year, I was able to be the Associate Vice President at University Affairs, where I was able to directly advocate for student wellness through a review of campus health services. Additionally, we gained student feedback on interactive learning alongside the McPherson Institute, as well as working with the Equity and Inclusion Office to identify gaps in campus safety and reporting tools. This year, I was also able to be a delegate for USA General Assembly, so the Fall USA General Assembly and the upcoming Winter General Assembly that was meant to be a few weeks ago, but COVID took place, so it's taking place on Monday. I was able to go through various policies as well as participate in discussions with student associations around the Student Choice Initiative. So what does this mean for MSU advocacy? So what does advocacy mean to me? Advocacy to me means standing firm and moral and standing up for people, as well as being courageous and being strategic to ensure that advocacy is effective and robust. So how do we do our advocacy? What does advocacy mean? So what does that mean for the MSU advocacy? First, I'll walk us through the structure of the MSU's advocacy. So currently, the VP Education externally advocates to 4 different levels. We advocate for student needs at the university, the City of Hamilton, the provincial government, and the federal level as well. Through the university level, we advocate through the VP Education and the education team alongside the MSU president to various university stakeholders, services, and offices. At the municipal level, we advocate directly to the City of Hamilton through community groups, local organizations, and direct relationships with city councillors. At the provincial level, provincially, we advocate largely through the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, which is an undergraduate coalition of 8 different student associations. Currently, the MSU has a Class A membership. This gives the MSU VP Ed a seat on the steering committee of the USA, as well as 8 voting seats at USA General Assembly. At the federal level, federally, we largely advocate through the undergraduates of Canadian Research Intensive Universities, which is a coalition of research intensive universities in Canada. What do I want to see? So something that I think is going to be really important in terms of our advocacy is increasing what's happening between the space, increasing what's happening between the McMaster Students Union and the partners that we externally advocate to. So overall, working towards longer term visions to improve the nature of one-year transitions in the MSU. Additionally, at the university level, it's going to be very important to increase our student outreach, as well as work towards increasing our advocacy partnerships at the university and strengthening our partnerships with the university as well, making sure that we're working with student groups to inform our advocacy, as well as ensuring that we're keeping up consistent relationships with the university. At the municipal level, I'd really like to see increased targeted partnerships, so essentially, if we're able to catalog our advocacy priorities a bit more closely, I believe that we're able to carry out targeted outreach with various stakeholders. For example, if we're able to one of my platform points is prioritizing anti-discrimination and anti-racism. Being able to work directly with an organization such as HCCI would really strengthen our anti-racism work in the city and would give us a great ground to begin the work with groups that are already doing great work in the city, as well as increasing our relationships with various community groups and keeping up consistent relationships with our city councillors. Provincially, I'd like to see us increase our relationships alongside USA, but also outside of USA. So increasing our direct MPP relations through the MSU, as well as increasing our direct Ontario Student Union relations, working with various student unions in the GTA, increasing our relationships with them as well. Federally, alongside UCREW, I'd like to increase our relationships, our direct student union relationships with MPs, as well as increase our direct student relationships with Canadian student unions. So timeline. So I've included a rough timeline of what this looks like. So it's going to be very, very important to use the summer to really dive into the structure of our advocacy and research and continue reaching out to MPs and MPPs. And I think this is going to be really important to be able to hit the ground running in September in terms of robustly accomplishing our advocacy priorities. I think that advocacy priorities are very, very important. And in order to accomplish them, it's going to be important to have an effective and robust advocacy structure to accomplish these priorities. So discussing exactly the targeted points that I'd like to change within MSU advocacy, I think it's going to be very, very, very important to increase cataloging our advocacy priorities. So essentially, we have 3 different levels that we advocate to. So with the university, municipal, and the provincial and federal. Currently, our advocacy priorities are informed by MSU policies, and it's going to be very, very important to ensure that in the 3 levels, we have advocacy priorities that we can work towards a long-term vision for, that we can catalog closely to make sure that every year we're moving the needle on them. Careful selection and planning of new foreseeable priorities is going to be very important as well. We've seen in the age of COVID that priorities can shift. Advocacy priorities that were happening the year before may change from year to year. It's going to be very important to be cataloging this and to be following up and seeing where gaps are and seeing where if priorities may have shifted. For example, open educational resources used to be a very, very big provincial and federal priority. And as through continuous advocacy, it has moved to a university priority and has come a little bit closer to home, as well as creating an advocacy action plan for each level of the MSU. So for each level of MSU advocacy. So ensuring that through each level, every AVP and the VP Ed has a strong understanding of how advocacy is going to be taking place, especially on the provincial and federal levels, as we primarily advocate through USA and UCREW, ensuring that we have a strong plan of how to advocate and how to increase our targeted outreach to student unions, when the best time to increase our targeted outreach to student unions, as well as how to most effectively and most consistently keep direct relationships with MPs and MPPs. I think a very important way to strengthen MSU advocacy is also going to mean bridging MSU services and MSU advocacy together. So advocacy at the university level can be strengthened through encouraging synergy between various levels of the organization. So education team AVPs and part-time managers of identity-based services, such as diversity services, the Pride Community Center, the Student Health Education Center, MACCESS, and the Women and Gender Equity Network, as well as the AVPs, University, Municipal, and Provincial Affairs, all have really, really great ideas, and a lot of them tend to overlap at times due to the nature of identity-based services, as well as the nature of advocacy and the education team. So something that I plan to do is equipping PTMs with advocacy training, ensuring that they are trained and comfortable in their ability to advocate, as well as encouraging year plan sharing. So during the process of creating year plans, ensuring that AVPs and that PTMs are able to collaborate on ideas, also to encourage synergy in the organization, as well as to foster potential opportunities for collaboration, as well as increasing professional development opportunities for PTMs and AVPs regarding equity research, as well as increasing the ability for advocacy experience. So I'll speak to some of my platform highlights. So some of my platform highlights are tuition and financial aid, deferred exams, academic accessibility, divestment, effective transit, and equity and OER funding. At the university level, it's going to be very important to prioritize and to balance out academic and equity priorities. I think that academic and equity priorities make up the bulk of university advocacy priorities. So on the academic side, ensuring that online learning and academic accessibility are robustly used, ensuring that professors are incorporating ECHO 360 into their learning. We've seen during the case of COVID-19 that online learning is something that's very, very possible and something that that's very learnable. I think it's going to be important, especially given the fact that there may be multiple waves of COVID, that students have a software that they're comfortable using that they can easily fall into should waves continue to happen and should quarantine continue. advocating for a change to deferred exam policy to ensure that our policies are student-centric, advocating for open educational resources to be used. Currently, we have funding that has been promised through the McMaster University Library, McPherson, and the university to ensure that financial accessibility and post-secondary affordability are priorities, ensuring that we're decolonizing syllabuses, and this looks different depending on faculties. So ensuring that in the arts and in the humanities, that syllabuses recenter various theories and recenter various findings from other parts of the world, as well as ensuring that on the sciences side, this is prioritized as well as course creation that helps students learn about colonialism and learn about how syllabuses can be decolonized on the university level. Also, for equity priorities, ensuring sustainability and prioritizing survivor-centric strategies, working with residence life to ensure that training is equipped for student-facing staff, as well as strengthening our mental health advocacy with the Student Wellness Center, robustly understanding food insecurity for students, as well as prioritizing student safety through an inquiry of security services. As for municipal priorities, I plan to prioritize transit, consistent service through encouraging and working with HSR to increase consistent service over the course of the year, ensuring that in the summer the 51 is running, as well as ensuring that during peak times, such as midterms, busing is consistent and students have access to consistent busing, ensuring that we're prioritizing sustainability, moving away from weekly garbage collection, as well as student safety and accessibility. Something that I really hope to pilot as well is advocating for anti-racism and anti-discrimination in Hamilton. It's going to be important for me to work with the HCCI to ensure that students are safe on campus. Currently, Hamilton has the highest rate of hate crimes in Canada, and this becomes a student safety issue for students wanting to get around the city. Additionally, encouraging environmental sustainability on the equity side as well, ensuring that students have access to environmental sustainability initiatives that they can participate in, ensuring that students are safe in the city and can participate in longevity over the course of their time at McMaster University. As well, on the provincial and federal priorities side, I found that this was the section that had the most overlap between academic and student life, as well as equity. So prioritizing tuition and financial aid, ensuring that students are robustly prioritized during COVID-19 through direct funding, as well as through creative means, such as advocacy asks of potentially moving OSAP forward, ensuring Indigenous student support through increased streamlining of funding, through encouraging more band to financial institution direct funding, as well as encouraging international student support through federal advocacy. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Thank you, Fazia. So we have a point of information. Violet, would you like to say your point of information?
Yeah, is the current compiling of questions for pooled or for individual questioning?
The compiling of questions are only for pooled.
Okay, thanks.
So I actually have an update I would like to share to the assembly. As of around 10 minutes ago, the other candidate did just withdraw their nomination. So what this means is that for the pooled questioning, we'll just be reduced to 15 minutes because we only do have one candidate at this moment. So I just wanted to say that, and we're now going to continue on to pooled questioning. Here we go. Let me continue to set up myself. Okay. Fozzie, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. You'll always be answering first because you're the only one. Here's the first question. In light of COVID-19, how do you plan on aiding students who have a, how do you plan as the VP Education to be supporting students who have a placement and internship aspect let me restart the question. I'm so sorry. In light of COVID-19, how do you plan on supporting students who have a placement or internship aspect, for example, if they're in nursing, in their curriculum that has been or may be canceled?
For sure. I think with COVID, there is a lot to consider, especially because it impacts students in a lot of different ways, especially depending on the nature of your faculty. I think that ensuring that we're working with both students and faculty offices to ensure that we're robustly understanding how COVID is impacting students. I know that nursing students also do a lot of placements. I know that a lot of students in various faculties also have partnered for internships that they were planning on going on for the summer. So I think just ensuring that we're robustly understanding, because I think effective advocacy begins with genuinely understanding the student experience, and then we're able to mitigate that, but making sure that we're prioritizing it and working with faculty offices consistently to address those gaps will be important.
Okay. The next question is, historically, a lot of MSU advocacy work is typically done by the VP Education and the President on behalf of the MSU members. How will you ensure that beyond this work, students at McMaster will have opportunities to participate in their own advocacy efforts at different levels?
For sure. I think there's actually quite a few opportunities that I've placed into my platform. For my food insecurity point, I plan on working with the students of Sustain 3 SO3 to encourage more people from campus to get involved in the conversations around food insecurity and the advocacy around food insecurity, as well as for my objective of anti-colonial syllabus adoption. I've spoken with some SRA members, but encouraging faculty participation in this. I really believe that people in their various faculties understand their faculties the best. I think incorporating students into what that could look like for different faculties will be important. But yeah, I think that the VP education role is important in terms of advocacy doesn't happen alone. Partnerships are inherent to advocacy, and ensuring opportunities for students to get involved in that advocacy will be very, very important. Being VP Ed doesn't mean that you're accomplishing all these platform points alone. And I think it's actually sometimes more beneficial to partner with students, get students involved, because there's just so many qualified students on campus. But yes, those are some of the ways that I plan to get students involved.
Awesome. So the next question is, with the rise of COVID-19, there are talks of moving classes to all online in the fall 2020 term. Across Ontario universities, McMaster dealt with it in one of the worst ways by not mandating a set order of what professors had to do, as when Western and U of T did. How do you plan on advocating for students that do not have internet access and cannot learn or access the online platforms that would come? Additionally, if classes do shift to all online courses, how do you plan on advocating for tuition fees of students?
For sure. So answering the question in two parts. So speaking to the first part, I think it's also going to be very important for the university to understand the realities of student life during COVID. Not everyone has access to high-speed internet. Not everyone has access to high-speed internet is actually the most important one. But not everyone has access to the various things that you would need, even just financial security as well. So ensuring that the university really, really understands that, and the construction of fall courses will be essential. This is something that's unprecedented. There's not, a guideline of the way that this should be done. And I think that actually leaves us a lot of opportunity for advocacy and for strong advocacy. So standing up for strong advocacy, genuinely understanding how students are impacted, and advocating and making sure the university understands that. Yeah, because there's stuff to balance out in university advocacy. There might be some pushback in terms of keeping academic standards high, but I also think that in line of keeping academic standards high, students need to be able to participate in these academic standards and have fair access to these academic standards. I don't think academic standards are the most important thing during a global pandemic. I think that student ability to interact with academia in a healthy way will be more important. Additionally, in terms of tuition, it's also important to note that if students don't have access to essential services that they usually would through in-person classes, there is an important question of whether or not tuition should be paid in full. I think that's a really important conversation to have, especially because online services of various things like SAS and Student Wellness Center would be at reduced capacity online.
Thank you. We have a point of information by Hackett.
Yes. Is there a way to limit this to be only 15 minutes? Can I put that?
It is, as soon as the candidate dropped, I automatically changed it to 15 minutes because there was then now only one candidate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Not a problem. Okay. And your next question is, Fozzie, are you good to go?
Yes.
Perfect. What is one critique you have of your predecessor, and how do you plan to address this?
So potentially one critique that I have of the VP Ed, also the VP Ed did a wonderful job. But I also think that it's going to be important. I think something I've showed in my platform is that it's going to be important to have robust advocacy provincially and federally. I think that moving away from
our work in USA, I guess. Okay. So what I would say is as a critique, because I think that this year's VP Ed actually set a lot of great groundwork foundations in terms of how to strengthen our provincial advocacy. What I will say is I think there needs to be more robust ways of understanding what the direction of that advocacy will mean in terms of the future of the organization and the long-term future of our advocacy. I think that there's a lot of questions in the air over the course of this year in terms of provincially and federally how we can most robustly, effectively advocate. So I think those are questions that need to be answered. So that's a potential critique for this year's VP Ed.
Okay. Can you tell us a time when you had to advocate to someone that did not agree with your points? How did you make sure that your voice was heard?
For sure. I think this year I was able to conduct a health services review as the AVP University Affairs. In constructing that health services review, I consulted with the various services that we would be reviewing. I think in our conversations with the Student Wellness Center, just at times, it's difficult to advocate to a service that highlights wellness to say that, there's gaps in the ways that you do wellness. But I think it's important to be firm and understanding that, even though full-time staff at these offices are at times and a lot of the times doing their best, there also can sometimes still be gaps that are missed even when the best is being done. So I think standing firm, I was able to stand firm and to be firm in terms of the gaps that I found in the Student Wellness Center and the gaps that I would be addressing and investigating through the health services review. But we were also able to be personable, have that conversation, get to a point where they also understood that addressing those gaps would be important.
Okay. Part of the VP Ed's role is managing the education team. How do you plan to manage and support this educational team?
So there are a lot of ways that I plan to support the education team. I think sitting on the education team this year and being managed by the current VP Education, Shamar, I think he did a great job, and I think he showed a lot of great ways to manage the education team, ensuring that in your management that you're being effective in supporting AVPs. Being an AVP can be taxing. It's a lot of advocacy, it's a lot of meetings, at times it can be a lot of writing. So ensuring that they're effectively supported, ensuring that they're equipped with the information that they need to effectively advocate, making sure that if there are peak times such as midterms and exams, that you're also taking on some responsibility as well, because as the VP Education, you're in a place where like you're working full time as opposed to AVPs who are working as students. So I think encouraging and ensuring that support, as well as accommodating for mental health, that is something that I really, really hope to plan to do. Students are in a unique situation with various stressors, and being an AVP as well as at times managing a full course load, it can be difficult. So I think making sure that you have that strong support piece and being understanding of the student experience.
Okay. So the next question is, what is your opinion on our external student advocacy organizations, such as USA? Do you think it is beneficial for the MSU to be a part of these organizations?
So I think at the provincial level, I do think that there is benefit to USA. I think I've said in some of our consultations with various SRA members that I do enjoy the fact that, there's USA General Assembly twice a year, and it is nice that students are able to kind of get involved in that advocacy experience. I know that my first USA General Assembly was a very, very interesting process. I was able to kind of get into what's happening in student politics and what those conversations are. I think also the benefit of USA is that, it's an organized organization that gives us connections to various student associations, as well as direct connections to MPs. I think that that's a benefit. However, I think there's also room for critique. I think that USA this year has showed us with the change in conservative government that there are holes in advocacy that prioritizes good relationships when at times those relationships can be strained if a government isn't prioritizing student needs, and sometimes that's what needs to be done. But I think that in terms of our advocacy, that these groups are part of our advocacy, and they are not meant to, and were never meant to be the entire thing. I think that provincial advocacy also means partnering with student unions that match up with the organizational stances of the MSU, as well as match up with as well as ensuring that we're effectively representing students as well. So I think that these organizations do have benefit, but I also think that there is benefit to direct relationships with MPs and direct relationships with student unions outside of the organizations that we're part of, such as USA and UCRU.
Okay. How does your vision for advocacy for the next year align with the president-elect? Where are the overlapping points, and how do you envision collaborating to achieving your combined advocacy goals for the year?
So I've spoken a lot with the president-elect Giancarlo, and we've discussed kind of advocacy, USA, and UCRU, and where our objectives align is ensuring that students are robustly and adequately represented. So I think just ensuring that at the provincial level that we're making sure that we're keeping partnerships where it's most beneficial for students, so ensuring that we're working with student unions, even if they're outside of USA, if they align with our organizational stances, ensuring our advocacy is full and robust, and making sure that we're taking the year to also really, really reflect and review the way that we do advocacy. So I think we overlap. Also at the university level, we have a lot of overlapping points in terms of sustainability, ensuring that students are helped in terms of mental health, ensuring that it's proactive and not reactive. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is, this year, in the MSU feedback survey, only 12.8 respondents felt their voice was heard in student advocacy initiatives. Next year, what will you do differently to ensure students feel adequately represented in MSU advocacy?
For sure. I think it starts with a few things. I think at the education team level, it's going to be really, really important that data that's collected is not just promoted, through social media, but is also promoted through targeted outreach. So making sure that we're collaborating with clubs and various student services and student organizations to ensure that we're getting that representation. Something that I found is that when you post a survey on Facebook, you're reaching a mass audience, but the actual audience that's taking the survey may not be actually a representative sample of the population at McMaster. So ensuring that we're being targeted in our survey outreach, as well as increasing generalized outreach, but also increasing opportunities for students just to give their opinions. I think that there aren't enough opportunities for students to be able to just drop in and be like, hey, I really hate this, and can kind of like leave and wash their hands of it, because there are students and there are organizations there that are willing to do that work. And I think that a lot of students are also really busy and may not be directly interested in advocacy, but that doesn't mean that advocacy doesn't benefit them and that student advocacy isn't helpful. So increasing opportunities for students to participate in the conversation without, having to do anything further, I also think is going to be very, very important.
Okay. And the next question is, this year, the MSU signed a 3-year renewal contract with the HSR. How do you plan to build off the current contract with your experience at Metrolinx?
Sure. So directly with the contract, I don't think I would have too much input on. I think that tends to be under the VP Finance role in terms of the actual contract. But I do have ideas in terms of advocacy. So in terms of advocating to the HSR, I want to advocate for more consistent timings, as well as eliminating area-rated funding of transit in Hamilton. I think that these are two things that benefit. The first one benefits a lot of students in near-campus neighborhoods around McMaster. And the second one, eliminating area rating, which is basically differential tax funding for differential service in the city, really helps a lot of students who may live in the city with their families, who may just live in the city by themselves. Ensuring consistent busing around the city is going to be very important.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I think those are all the pooled questions I currently have, unless someone is trying to email me currently a question. Is someone trying to email me a question or? Okay, I don't see any activity in the chat. So I believe that is the end of our pooled question period. Thank you so much, Fazia.
Thank you.
Okay, now would be the time if you, Figurito?
I would like to motion for a 20-minute break.
Okay, may I please have a seconder? Johnson, Figurito, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, we've had people sitting down for a while, and we also have some full-time staff who I'm sure would love to take a break and maybe grab some food before we finish up the day. So yeah, I'd like to give people a chance to grab some food and take a break.
Okay, Johnson, would you like to speak to it?
What Sarah said.
Okay, do we have any further discussion? Okay, so I apologize for spelling. I just quickly typed. Moved by Figurito, seconded by Johnson, that the assembly take a 20-minute recess. Now would be the time to vote. Okay. And the motion passes. So I will go and take the liberty to say, to round up time and say, I will see all of you here at 3:50 sharp. 3:50 sharp.